channel and to something a little different. I been doing a bunch of computer restorations, and I don't know, I just want to do something a little different than just another PC restoration because, well, that's, I want to do more on this very young channel than just do computer stuff. So I thought I was going to review something that is technically retro related. And I'm going to review this. This is the Legends Flashback Blast retro plug and play console or game system, quote, from AtGames. These guys have been around for quite a while, making these little plug and play style mini console kind of things. Sometimes they are good, some are decent, and some are just horrible. I actually have one that I just absolutely do not like, which I need to do a review on that too. And there's actually 6 of these little consoles that AtGames made. The Atari Flashback, which is the paddles. The Activision Flashback. Another version of the Atari Flashback, this time just a controller. And a third Atari Flashback Blast, that is a controller. There's actually a 6th one that I do not have yet. It's the Pac-Man one, which just has Pac-Man and stuff on it. I'm not going to review all of these because that would take a long time. But so I'm just going to snag one of these and just do a quick review on it. Because I've seen some reviews of these and I kind of want to give my own point of view on them. So the reason why I grabbed these, I didn't get all 5 of these at once. I actually got all 5 of these over the course of at least a year. And this was the first one I bought, and I actually hadn't opened it yet. And then the other 4 I got throughout the year as I was over at my local Walmart getting some other non-video game related stuff. And one day they were all marked down to like $4.88 each, so I got the last 2. I don't remember which 2 they were. And unfortunately I missed out on getting the Pac-Man one, so eventually I'll get that one. But the reason why I grabbed these was because I have a lot of memories playing the Atari 2600 with my dad. But I grabbed these because, yeah, I just loved playing the old Atari 2600 games and the old 8-bit style games like the old NES and stuff. And I love the idea of the plug and play consoles because they made it easier to play the kind of games that I remember growing up playing without having to drag the old Atari out and worry about, the cartridge connector edge getting dirty or corroded, and have to worry about the power brick possibly dying or the controllers not working and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the thing of, as time goes on, you either lose games while you're moving or they just quit working and they die, because everything does die eventually. And so that's kind of why I grabbed these, because I have a lot of memories of playing some old retro games. So this is the Legends Flashback. This isn't really anything specific. I'm not really sure which one I want to open up and review. I'm just gonna kind of talk about each one of these real quick, and then I'll grab one, open it up, and I'll show how it gets plugged in and works, because it's actually pretty easy how these things work. So anyway, this is the Legends Flashback. Right on the front it says Space Invaders and featuring Burger Time, which I don't think I've played. But this one has 12 games built in, including Burger Time, Burning Rubber, Escape It, Frontline, Jungle Hunt, Lock and Chase, Miss It, Polaris, Shield Shifter, Space Invaders, Space Raid, and Strip Off. I've only, of these 12 games on this, I've only played Space Invaders. That's probably why I grabbed this one, was because it had one game that I knew, and I figured, well, if I like, Space Invaders, I'm probably gonna like the other games. Now, these aren't all Atari 2600 games. Some of these might be like, I think they might be Commodore titles or older Atari 8-bit computer or other of the 8-bit Intellivision, ColecoVision. They might be other games like that. I don't know yet. I haven't fully figured that out. The red Atari flashback looks, front and foremost, is Centipede. This one claims to have 20 built-in games. Now, a lot of these games I've actually I either have or I have played. 3D Tic-Tac-Toe, Air Sea Battle, Bowling, Centipede, Desert Falcon, Dodge 'em, Fatal Run, Golf, Human Cannonball, Millipede, Mini Golf, Radar Lock, Save Mary, Sprint Master, Tempest, Yar's Revenge, and Yar's Return, which is interesting. And these three games here, Sword Quest, Earth World, Fire World, and Water World. That's actually very interesting that they're on here, because those, back in the, I believe the early 80s, Atari had a competition, and these three games here, you beat one of the games, it'd give you a code. You beat another game, it would give you another code. You beat the third game, it'd give you a code. And there's actually a contest. If you beat all four games, or you beat each game, you get a certain prize, and then you into a competition. But there's actually 4 games, but only 3 on here, and that's because Air World was never officially released. In fact, I don't even think it was even coded. So it's kind of neat that these 3 games are actually pretty collectible and sought after. So the idea that I can play them without having to track down, God knows how expensive those cartridges are going to be. The pink Atari Flashback, which I'm just saying pink because that's the color of the box. This specific one was a Walmart exclusive. I think the Pac-Man one was a Target exclusive. This one has 20 built-in games, but they're all games that used the paddles on the Atari 2600. There was a lot of titles that actually did use the paddles. And of course, you had to have, it says Pong, but Pong is not actually its own game on here. It's Backgammon, Blackjack, Breakout, Cannon Bomber, Circus Atari, Demons to Diamonds, Night Driver, Steeplechase, Street Racer, Stunt Cycle, Super Breakout, Video Olympics, and there's like 8 games here, including basketball, foosball, handball, hockey, Pong, Super Pong, Quadra Pong, volleyball, and then Warlords. Which, if I remember right, I think Warlords was the tank game. So a lot of these games I've played as well, because I think I have Video Olympics for the Atari 2600. We have the Activision Flashback, and this is actually the first one I bought, and it's because of the games that are on here. This one also has 20 built-in games. It's kind of weird that this one is the only one that has 12. The others all have 20. Nice black in color. Atlantis, Beam Rider, Chopper Command, Cosmic Commuter, Crackpots, Decathlon, Dragster, Enduro, Fishing Derby, Freeway, Frostbite, HERO, and I'm only spelling that out because it's how it's spelled out. Keystone Capers, Mega Mania, Pitfall, Pressure Cooker, River Raid, Sequest, Stampede, Star Master. And the reason why I grabbed this was because of Pitfall and River Raid. I played those all the time on my dad's Atari. I loved playing it, and unfortunately I lost my copy when I was moving. I don't know if it got thrown in a box and the box got tossed or what, but it did get lost, which is sad. The final one that I have is the Atari Flashback, the Volume 2. And what's interesting is that this one is Volume 1, Volume 3, Volume 2. So these 3 kind of go together to make up a good bulk of... at least a good chunk of the Atari's library. This one's purple, and in pronouns asteroids on the front. It includes Adventure, Adventure 2, Asteroids, Atari Video Cube, Championship Soccer, Crystal Castles, Double Dunk, Gravatar, Haunted House, Maze Craze, Missile Command, Off the Wall, Real Sports Basketball, Real Sports Tennis, Secret Quest, Skydiver, Submarine Commander, Surround, Video Chess, and Video Pinball, which I think I've got 1 or 2 of those games. So yeah, that's the 5 At Games plug-and-play consoles. And I'm going to do a review of this fully, so I'm going to actually open one of these. I might actually open the... I'm going to open this one. So what these are is a modern version of the old plug-and-play, self-contained mini consoles that came out. I think these started like really hitting hard early 2000s, mid 2000s. And I loved playing this whole thing like all the time, especially when my dad's Atari got damaged, and that's kind of why I'm fixing it. This is actually a little bit different because this actually contains this is the one I'm thinking of, an entire Atari 2600 on a chip. But this also might be using some sort of emulation. I don't remember. But let's get this opened up and see what's inside. I want to do this really carefully because I don't want to damage the box. Not that these are like super collectible or anything, but they're, you know, treat your stuff with respect. Okay. So in the box looks like 2 collectible stickers that you can put on some stuff. Put that back in the box later. The instruction guide. The Blast controller. A USB micro cable. And the Blast device itself. So yeah, this is actually a lot more modern than than previous versions of these consoles, because the previous ones used AV hookup, which is fine because that's what, you know, it was cheap at the time, especially in the 90s and early 2000s. This is actually using HDMI. So how this works is the games are actually stored on here. This is almost like a mini console. Gets its power from this USB cable. And this is just the wireless controller that connects to this. Is how these work. Let me guess, battery's not included. Because why would batteries be included? No, battery's not included. Just like everything else. So, quick little instruction guide. And yeah, it shows all 6 of them. The Activision, Atari V1, Atari V2, V3, Legends, and the... Okay, so it's not just Pac-Man, it's Bandai Namco, but it only has 8 games. I think it's Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, and something else. And it's actually pretty... I don't want to say thorough, but it's actually pretty well described. You have the rewind button, so you can rewind gameplay by 7 seconds. The menu button, start button, the directional D-pad, power indicator, power switch. You have a fire action, unpause is A, right difficulty, game select, TV type, left difficulty, and pause game. It talks about how to pair it, how to start playing. And once it's set and triggered, you don't have to do anything else. And these actually use wireless, 2.4 gigahertz wireless connectivity. In fact, I'll go get the thing I'm talking about, because as soon as I show it, you're going to see what I'm talking about, why I don't like it. Also had to get some generic batteries. So the reason why I really like that this is wireless, it's not Bluetooth wireless, I don't think. Let me reread through this. I don't think it's Bluetooth. No, just 2.4G wireless. I don't think that's Bluetooth. I'm pretty sure that's not. But the reason why I'm glad of that is because AtGames, one of their previous attempts at a retro console was this little Genesis, which I'm going to do a review of this later, my full thoughts on it. So I am really happy that AtGames went through the effort of redesigning and using wireless, because let's face it, infrared, and that's not a really old thing. That was released like less than 10 years ago. So something less than 10 years ago was using infrared still. So this actually is kind of looks like it's modeled after the Sega Genesis controller, which is ironic because I actually did not notice that until after I grabbed the Sega Genesis. D-pad is not great, but not terrible. Like it feels like the buttons definitely should have a click. Everything's got a responsive click to it, but I'm not... It's very light, so it feels cheap. It almost feels like a cheap third-party controller that you'd get for a retro console. So like if you have like an actual Sega Genesis or a Nintendo or Super Nintendo or whatever, and you get one of those third-party modern built controllers, that it just feels a little... It feels cheap, but there is a little bit of weight there, like it might not be overly cheap. But yeah, all this is just the controller. This is actually the console itself. And each of these, the dongle matches the color of the box, so you can differentiate which one you're playing with, which is really good because you don't have to worry about mixing these things up. And the reason why you don't have to worry about mixing these things up is because, technically speaking, this controller does not have to go with this dongle. It does not at all. This is just the universal controller they put with the Blast. Technically speaking, so you can leave this plugged in, and you can use any of the controllers that came with the other 4 that use this style controller, which is good. And I think the ones that are 2-player, I think there's some 2-player games in here. You can actually take one of the ones out of another box, just a controller, and it'll pair with this one, so you can play 2-player on it. Apparently, I don't know. So let's get this hooked up. Let's grab my TV. And how these work is, I hope this works. Oh no. So I did not realize that this little TV is not going to work because there's not enough space for the dongle. Oh God, that's irritating. I should have known that. I should have known that. Let's go see if we can fix this. Okay, and I'm back down in my usual workbench because I couldn't... The other TV, the HDMI port was facing down, which caused a bit of a problem with me plugging in the the console. So we're going to retry this with this TV, because this one has a different location for the HDMI port. The only problem is with this little TV here is there's no USB power or USB connector on this TV. This is a little too old for that, but this is the TV I normally use for playing old games on. So, well, games of a certain era, like the PS2, the original Xbox and stuff. This is just a little TV I was using for it. Because on the back, I don't know why that's there. It has a lot of hookups. It's got the coaxial antenna, the component, AVI composite, or just AV, VGA, HDMI, computer audio in, that's video. So this one's got a lot of stuff going for it. So what I'm going to have to do is you plug the console into the HDMI port right here. And because it's jutting out the back now, I can't set it against the back of the wall. And I have to use a different USB cable. Luckily, it's just a generic USB micro, I believe. I'm going to plug that in. Plug it into the back here. And it should be powered on. Alright. Should turn the volume down a little bit. I don't know how loud this is going to be. Oh, and there we go. So, let's compare how this thing looks. So it actually looks pretty good. I've had a few other plug and plays like this that have they either tried way too hard or they didn't try hard enough. This one, it looks like it's just an emulator. Does have a classic sound, I like it. Looks like it's got a bunch of games that I've tried, at least. So I'm only going to play 3 games, only because I want to compare this to the actual games. So I have the actual copy of Dragster and the actual copy of River Raid. Of all the games on here, this is the only 2 I have, so I'm going to have to grab my Atari and compare that later. I'll compare them here after a bit. So, let's try Pitfall. 2018. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. Oops. It's not as responsive as I was hoping. Okay, so the sound's a little bit off on that one, but I'm not sure why. Let's try River Raid. 2018, okay. I don't know why it says that. I'm not sure why it doesn't sound right. Oh, so I can change the... Oops. Yeah, I'm not sure why, but it just sounds off. Loading. So it sounds a little off. So the sound isn't perfect, but it is at least... I mean, it's not even good. I'm not sure if it's the TV or not, because... Okay, so let's try a different one. So the games don't look bad, but it's just something about this controller that's way too, like, it's way too responsive than what I'm used to. So we're going to unplug this and put the cap back on. So put that all back in the right box. So let's open up the blue box, because this one has some different games on it. One of them being Space Invaders, which is the main one on the box. And just to compare it, I'm going to compare it to the original Space Invaders, or the Atari version anyway. And it does. Alright, so this has got a bunch of different games. Foremost being Space Invaders. Oops. Now this one sounds different. Let's just try Space Invaders, since that's the main one I want to try. Oops. Ah. Okay, so that sounded good. It sounded better anyway. I don't know why the Activision one sounded so weird. Okay, so I'm going to plug in my Atari and see if I can show a difference between these games before I give my full review. Okay, just to make this comparison fair, Space Invaders. So it's not even a challenge which one's different. Okay. Let's try River Raid. Okay, so the colors, there's some banding artifacting on this. It's not exactly the same. Sounds are way better. Now let's try Dragster. Again, I would try Pinball, but I don't have Pinball. Or Pitfall. Pinball. Idiot. There we go. Okay, so the colors are definitely different. And everything's a lot blurrier on the actual version. In fact, you can barely make out the Activision. Not that I'm any better. Okay, I still suck at this game. Okay, so what's my opinion on these little things? They're definitely retro inspired. I don't think that this is a system on a chip like a lot of these plug and play systems used. I think this is using some sort of emulation, which is fine. I have no problem with emulators. I have no problem with FPGA chips and all that kind of stuff. No problem. Because, let's face it, if I wanted to play these games on real hardware, or if you wanted to play them on real hardware, you'd have to go and track down a Atari 2600 or your ideal console of choice, track down the cartridges, track down the controllers, and any other miscellaneous cables, and then hope and pray that the console works after it gets shipped to you. Because a lot of these consoles of this generation, this era of the 80s, are slowly dying. A lot of the onboard chips are starting to die, the traces are starting to corrode, the audio video output is starting to become unstable. So I definitely like the idea of these plug and play consoles, and they're getting a lot better. I'm thinking back to, these little AV ones. These were nice, these were fine, and I had no problem playing this for the longest time because the games on here were, they were fun games that they were the exact same games that I had for the Atari 2600. But this is still an emulator too. And when this came out, there were still people using Square CRTs or Square LCDs. So the image was still set in its original native resolution. If I tried to put that on a widescreen, it would stretch it and upscale it, and it would just look horrible. The edges would be all messed up, proportions would be wrong. This is actually, it's upscaled. I don't know if it's correctly, like 100% perfectly correct, but it is upscaled in such a way that I have no complaints about it. And the games that were on here, I actually did play through all of them a little bit. I only showed a couple. These are actually pretty neat. If you're into retro games and there's any of these games that are on here that you used to play, I definitely, would recommend. I would definitely recommend one of these. I really would if you can find one. I don't know if they're still being made and sold, so it might be more of an eBay or friend or somebody nearby bought one. But besides that, no, I mean, these are really, really interesting. They're not perfect by any means. I mean, these controllers definitely have some issues. And I think my main issue with when I was playing a lot of these games is it's not that they're like there's a delay in the responsiveness of the buttons. I almost think there's what's the best way to say this? Not enough of a delay. And I think what I'm trying to get to with that is, like, if you take the original Atari controller, the joystick is stiff. You had to put a lot of effort to get it to move, and the games responded with a certain amount of speed. So you could get them to, work the way you wanted to. But because the technology has gotten so good, I'm not saying this controller is like Xbox, PlayStation level of quality here, but it definitely, I could tell it was a lot more responsive than I was expecting. Like, I was expecting there to be a delay. I was expecting there to be some latency, because when I played the games originally on the original Atari, there was that latency. There was that delay because the joystick was so stiff. I didn't get the feeling that I was playing. I didn't get the feeling that I was playing on an emulator. That's something else that I kind of want to say, because, like, if you play like on the PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 or any of the PC titles that had these games bundled in, like the retro collections or whatever on the consoles, you felt like you were playing on an emulator because you were playing with you were using a modern controller on a modern console with a modern television, and it felt like it was an emulation because it wasn't the real game on real hardware. This, I kind of got a sort of impression that I was playing, like, this controller, it has a retro feel to it, that it doesn't feel like I'm playing a modern console. It feels like I'm playing a retro console that has these games already on it, just minus the cords. It's not perfect. I will admit that it's not perfect, because when I'm playing these older games, I kind of like the idea of the square screen, the CRT, the all the little quirks and the artifacting that those old games have. I guess I kind of expect that when I'm playing retro games. So when I'm playing one like on one of these, it feels like it's too crisp, it's too clean, which is not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing, but it's just on my end, it's good, but it's almost, I don't want to say too good, because I'm not trying to top this thing up. I have my faults with it. Because for one thing, it's HDMI, which is great for modern televisions. You want to play this on a modern television, just plug it in like you would a flash drive, just with an HDMI port, and then plug in your USB power. And then you just leave it plugged in, and then when you turn your TV on and turn it to that station, to that HDMI station, it'll just start working. So that's not my gripe with it. I guess if I was to have a gripe, it's definitely emulation, and it feels like I'm playing an emulator, which, you know, pick your poison, track down original hardware, play on original hardware, and run the risk of it not working after a while, or modern hardware with modern emulation. I have no problem with emulation, like I said, but it doesn't feel 100% like it's emulated. It does feel like it's emulated in certain key points because the graphics are too clean, they're too the resolution's too nice. So I guess I was kind of expecting it to be a little on the choppy side. I think AtGames really did step their game up, especially with their previous plug and play generations. I'm looking at you, Sega Genesis. But this is definitely I'd say if you're a fan of retro games and you don't mind, you know, playing an emulator or an emulation of a game, then by all means, yeah, get one of these. This is actually pretty fun. I don't have to lug CRT around. I don't have to worry about if the TV even has AV composite, because that's something else. This is fine and all on older LCD televisions from the last decade, but there's a lot of TVs that are coming out that don't have AV composite. That all they have is HDMI well, that's really it. I think there's quite a few televisions that are out there that are brand new that don't have any AV composite or any component hookups. So HDMI is definitely the way to go. But I guess my final verdict is I like it. It's not perfect. It's not 100% this is the way you play retro games. But it's definitely a way to play retro games that I think would make fans of retro games happy. They might not be overjoyed, or they might not be, oh my god, this is awesome. But it's definitely, oh, I remember playing Asteroids. It plays very well. So, oops. With that being said, this video is pretty much wrapped up. And I enjoyed doing this little review thing, because it's something different other than just PCs. I'm going to put this back in the box, though. So yeah, that's the flashback blast from AT Games. I do want to mention, though, that these actually have a bit of a controversy about them, because especially the Namco the Namco one, the Pac-Man one, those were sent out to a few YouTubers, not me, but other YouTubers, to get reviewed, and they got glowing reviews because they were the arcade version. They were the version everybody wanted to play. They didn't want to play the NES version or the Atari version. They wanted to play the arcade version. But then when they got to being in stores, for some reason people started realizing that they're not the arcade version. The ones that were in stores were now the NES version, which a lot of people thought was kind of weird. And there was actually a lawsuit and, falsifying information kind of stuff. As far as I know, it just affected the Pac-Man version, because apparently getting the rights to the arcade version was a lot harder than getting the rights to the non-arcade version. But definitely a step up from where plug-and-play games were, whether it was the early 2000s, or even just a few years ago. This is definitely a step up from that. So with that being said, I hope you liked the video. If you have any comments or anything, just put them down in the comment section. I will look at them and respond within a reasonable amount of time. If you have any ideas for future videos, go ahead and let me know. And if you want to see any more of these in its own separate video, let me know, and I'll do a much more in-depth video of one of these. So until then, see you in the next video.